The chair recognizes the Sergeant at Arms.
I have the honor to announce the arrival of the Honorable Tim Walz, Governor of the State of Minnesota, and his official party.
Will you please stand? The Sergeant at Arms will escort the Governor and his official party to the front of the chamber. You may be seated. Members of the Joint Convention and guests, I present to you the Governor of the State of Minnesota, the Honorable Tim Walz.
Thank you. Thank you and good evening. I assure you we'll be done by the wild tip, first drop of the puck. I was reminded of that on the way here. Madam Speaker and members of the Minnesota House of Representatives, Mr. President and members of the Minnesota Senate, Madam Chief Justice, distinguished members of the Minnesota Supreme Court, Chief Judge Siegel, my fellow constitutional officers, members of my staff and cabinet and the administration, Governor Dayton and Ms. Anna Dayton, thank you for coming back and thank you for all you continue to do for Minnesota. Grateful. Distinguished tribal leaders, Chairwoman Kathy Shavers, President Johnny Johnson, escorts in the Minnesota State Patrol and the Minnesota National Guard, Chaplain Colonel Buddy Wynn, State Chaplain of the Minnesota National Guard. Thank you, Chaplain. My partner, Lieutenant Governor Peggy Flanagan, and Minnesota's second gentleman, Tom Weber. I hope NPR reports that. Minnesota's First Lady, my wife, Gwen Walz. Gwen, and my sister-in-laws are up there, so thank you. I'm on my best behavior. Guests and my fellow Minnesotans, I want to send all of our best wishes to Senate Majority Leader Carrie Dietzick. Senator Dietzick has long been a leader in Minnesota, but she's recently become a role model for unexpected reasons. Like so many of our neighbors and our loved ones, Senator Dietzick is battling cancer. But she hasn't let her fight with cancer stop her from fighting for all Minnesotans. In between treatments, Senator Dietzick is calling into meetings, negotiating, and working hard to deliver for the people of Minnesota. Senator Dietzick, we know you're watching tonight. We are in awe of your strength, your courage, and your commitment to the state of Minnesota. Thank you, and get back here soon. Half a century ago, a governor came to St. Paul with a mandate for change. Despite fierce opposition, he eventually won popular support for an agenda rooted in the belief that Minnesota could and should be the best place in America to raise a family. His plan reshaped our state's finances, invested hundreds of millions of dollars in our schools, lowered the costs for working families, and put Minnesota on a path to a brighter and more sustainable future for all. The national press called it the Minnesota Miracle, but it wasn't a miracle, not really. What it was patience and hard work, the quiet building of political will behind a vision that was shared by an overwhelming majority of Minnesotans. Last fall, the people of Minnesota sent me back to St. Paul to serve this state I love so much, but they didn't send me alone. Minnesotans elected the most diverse legislature in our state's history, one that's united around a shared vision of making this state the best place in America to raise a family. All of you. That's why on the day I took the oath of office for the second time, I declared that the era of gridlock was over. For 4 years, despite enormous headwinds and complicated politics, we did get a lot of good things done for the people of Minnesota. But now we have a new mandate for action, a chance to set aside the old fights in favor of doing something truly historic for our children and our grandchildren. This is a moment we have been building towards for a long time, and we will not let it go to waste. These bodies started out the session by cutting taxes by $100 million, making it a little bit easier for families to pay their bills and businesses to hire workers. And that was just the beginning of the work that we've done to strengthen the economy in every corner of the state. Thanks to a unanimous vote of this legislature, we unlocked millions in infrastructure funding to help rebuild and repair our roads and bridges. We passed financial assistance to help struggling families stay in their homes and emergency funding for food shelves so families could keep putting food on the table. Thank you. We got assistance for workers on the Iron Range to help miners when North Shore Mining went idle. We established a carbon-free electricity standard that will transition our state to 100% clean energy by 2040. It will help our state win the race to create new jobs and new industry. New jobs are good. And just last month, I had the honor of signing into law a bill that will provide free school breakfast and lunch to every single child in Minnesota. That was the end. Minnesotans, 3 months into a second term, I'm proud to report the state of our state is strong, and it's getting stronger with every investment we make in our people and the futures they're working so hard to build. But make no mistake, Minnesota's strength isn't just our economy or our schools or our natural resources. Our strength comes from our values. The forces of hatred and bigotry are on the march in states across this country and around the world. But let me say this now and be very clear about this. That march stops at Minnesota's borders. I'm going to do something a little bit un-Minnesotan. I'm going to talk about what we're really talking about now. I've seen some of my fellow governors on TV. They find a lot of time to be on TV, and I hear them talking about freedom. But it turns out what they really mean is that government should be free to invade your bedroom, your children's locker room, and your doctor's office. Yeah, here in Minnesota, when we talk about freedom, we talk about having our children be free to go to school without worrying about being shot dead in their school. Look, I'm only the governor of this great state. It's not up to me how folks in those places, folks like Florida, go about their business. But I got to tell you, I'm pretty glad we do it our way here and not that way. If you need any examples to maybe change your mind on this one, they're banning books in their schools. We're banishing hunger from ours. They look at their most vulnerable people and they see scapegoats. We look at our most vulnerable people and see neighbors. And that's why we're giving undocumented Minnesotans the opportunity to get a driver's license, to live their lives with dignity. They see people trying to vote as a threat to their power. We see it as a source of pride, and that's why we restored the right to vote for 55,000 of our citizens. And I don't know why, but apparently they're afraid of facing up to this great nation's entire history. And maybe here in Minnesota, we're just made of stronger stuff. But because of that, it's why we're going to go ahead and recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday this year in the state of Minnesota. Some of these folks want to put bullies in charge of your health care. We'd like to put you in charge of your health care and put bullies in their place. And that's why we protected access to gender-affirming health care and established an ironclad right to reproductive freedom. Look, I get it. Politicians want to be seen as fighters. What they don't seem to understand is it's not enough to be a fighter. You've got to choose the right fights. And if there's one thing I hope folks across this country recognize and take away from what you're doing here in Minnesota, is it's amazing what you can accomplish when you stop complaining about corporations going woke and start giving a damn about real people and real lives. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. So I'm just here today. Let's keep choosing the right fights. Let's keep going to bat on behalf of regular Minnesotans. And let's keep making Minnesota the best place to have that family. That's what this year's budget and discussion is all about. The plan that we've put forward is starting to work on how do we make life more affordable for people. It focuses on families who need it the most. A nation-leading child tax credit would put billions of dollars back into the hands of the people who need it the most. If we did nothing else this legislative session, that would reduce child poverty by 25% in the state of Minnesota. Look, Look, it's not just an moral imperative or the right thing to do. It's a critical piece of the plan to improve our schools and ready our economy for the future. And that's just the start of what we can do for Minnesota families. Our plan would send a portion of the surplus right back to Minnesotans in the form of a check so that they can pay for everything from gas and groceries to summer camp and college tuition as they see fit. Meanwhile, let's just go ahead and make it a lot easier for parents to find and pay for great daycare. Our plan would give 150,000 Minnesota households thousands of dollars each to help pay for that child care. And to make sure there's enough spots for everybody's children, we're going to make it easier to start a child care business. And we're going to give the professionals who care for our children at that critical stage a long overdue pay raise. Focusing on our family, focusing on our children. The plan adds 25,000 public pre-K seats to make sure there's a place for your child. And it also invests in early learning scholarships for families who need it the most to make sure they get to make the choice that's best for their family. Everyone in this room who's a parent knows those first 5 years of your child's life, nothing gives you more anxiety than trying to balance work and family. And making great childcare accessible and affordable will make that stress a whole lot less. And by the way, so will universal paid leave. But of course, you get your child to kindergarten, you've got a lot of other things to think about for the next 13 years. No parent in Minnesota should and will settle for second best when it comes to their child's education. With the rising cost putting financial pressure on educators and school boards across this state, it's high time that we tied school funding to inflation to make sure no one has to start cutting corners on our children. On top of that, this plan invests billions into the education system, including more than 10% on the general education funding formula over the next 4 years. It will allow us to invest in the heroic teachers who are doing this work every single day. Also, by the way, it has the money in there to make sure that every one of those children have a full stomach with those free meals you provided. So thank you. We know the stresses our children face in a modern world. This plan addresses the mental health needs, allowing for more school counselors, more nurses, more social workers to make sure that no child falls through the cracks. And we're launching a new plan to modernize and streamline state government, establishing an agency to make sure we're providing a comprehensive support place for parents. Whether it's early learning, food assistance, or anything else, you ought to have somewhere where you can go, one place you can go to access all those resources. This plan will do just that. But for all of you, you'll get more enthusiastic about that as the month goes on. So, of course, putting families first also means upholding our first and most basic responsibility for all of us, keeping our communities safe. That's why our plan includes more than $500 million in public safety funding for cities and counties across our state. That's the single largest investment in Minnesota's history. Whether it's a surge in car thefts or taking on the opioid epidemic, our first responders and law enforcement agencies, they've got an awful lot to deal with. They should have the resources necessary to tackle the issues that face communities. But we can't talk about public safety. I'm a blind squirrel. I found one. On the theme of talking about what's real out there a little bit, we can't talk about public safety without talking about guns. So let's have that conversation. I'll go ahead and put my credibility up against anyone on this issue. I'm a veteran and I'm a hunter. And for many years, I was one of the best shots in Congress, and I got the dang trophies to prove it. I know guns as well as anyone, but I'm sick and tired of talking about that. Because I'm not just a veteran, not just a hunter, not just a gun owner. I'm a father, and for many years I was a teacher. And we all know damn well weapons of war have no place in our schools, in our churches, in our banks, or anyone wants to live in peace. We know the state where our country's in, and we know what the news has been every single week, every single day. So let's be honest, really honest. We know all of us know all those things to be true. We're just used to being bullied by the gun lobby. You know what? When I first started in Congress, I had an A rating from the NRA. I have straight Fs now. I sleep just fine at night. More to the point. Minnesotans, and I especially amongst them, are not going to stand by and let people keep making this about the Second Amendment when it's really about our first responsibility, keeping our children safe. Be very clear. The time for hiding behind thoughts and prayers is long gone. What we need is action, and we need it now. So here's what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. We've got gun safety bill on the table, and we're going to get it passed. And I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign it, and this is what's going to happen. We're going to have universal background checks. We're going to have red flag laws, keep guns out of the hands of people. And we're going to have lawful gun owners not be impinged upon one bit to continue doing what they've already done. These are smart policies. If there's anybody that doubts, anyone in America doubts that we're going to take meaningful action to protect our kids, I've got two words: watch us. This has got to. Well, there's so much more to this plan. We're going to increase local government aid to reduce property taxes, funding to replace lead pipes, rebuild aging roads, tax credits for electric vehicles. We've got a real opportunity here, people, to improve our infrastructure, grow our economy, and create a lot of new jobs in the process. Oh, by the way, those are going to be good-paying union jobs. Minnesota. We're on the theme of history. Minnesota's always been a labor state. Minnesota always will be a labor state. Look, these are pragmatic ideas. Things that maybe won't make headlines, but they'll make life a little easier, a little safer, a little more fulfilling for people across our state. And we're going to get them done. We ought to be awful darn proud of that. After all, we're not the only people talking like this. All across America, people want a shot for their kids to go to good schools, safe streets, clean water, economic opportunity. And we're not the only place that's organizing around that positive vision. Here's the difference. When it comes to putting that vision into action, when it comes to showing people what comes after gridlock, what you can have instead of gridlock, and what we can do when we set aside the dumb fights and fight the good ones instead, well, there's no place quite like Minnesota right now in that regard. Look, that's a credit to everyone involved in our state's democracy, starting with the folks in this room tonight. But it also extends to organizers and activists, people who show up not just on election day, but every single day, fighting for equity, fighting for the environment, fighting for labor union rights, fighting for small business owners, fighting for farmers, fighting for our LGBTQ community, and of course, fighting for our kids. I want to take a minute and say thank you for the services that you're providing on all of these issues and the service you provide to civic life in Minnesota. And I want to ask you to keep pushing, keep fighting, keep going. The whole nation is looking to you for inspiration. Together, we're not just showing the people of Minnesota what we're capable of and delivering on our promises. We're showing the entire American people just how much promise is contained in that progressive vision held by so many people. We're redrawing a roadmap for 49 other states by doing whatever it takes to become the state that works for every single person. We're proving we're proving not only can you campaign on this idea of looking to the future, on compassion and decency, you can actually govern that way. 50 years after the Minnesota Miracle, we've got another chance to be America's North Star. An opportunity to carve out a piece of the country where no child is left hungry. Where no community is left behind. And nobody gets told they don't belong. A place where government exists not to meddle in your life, but to make it a little bit easier. We have the resources. We have the shared vision. And for the first time in half a century, we have the political will to get this done. Let's not waste this opportunity. Let's get to work building a state that we're proud to raise our kids in. We're proud to start a new business in. A state we're proud to go out and brag about. More of that, Minnesota. We've turned a place in Minnesota where everyone is valued, everyone is seen, everyone is heard, and we're cutting the edges on the technology that we need to be there in the future. So let's get started today. Thank you, and may God bless the great North Star state of Minnesota. Thank you all. Thanks, everyone. Thank you. We'll watch a while.